Oh, ready? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Just Ask Jen, our financial town hall on April Fool's Day.
And this is no joke.
Yes, this is no joke, right? So welcome, and today's topics are, we have two, and they're kind of interrelated, is to talk about how we measure our performance in the treasurer's office and how best we serve our school customers and our budget, our departments. And then how that interrelates and the importance of the role of our partner over here, Lauren, as our Chief Audit Executive. So we'll start off with introductions. So Mr. Craig.
Brandon Craig, board member.
Dr. Moff, board member and board president this year.
And I'm Jen, Just Ask Jen, the district's treasurer, chief financial officer.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lauren Roberts, the district's chief audit executive.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Crossett. I'm a board member, and I serve on the finance committee with board member Craig.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Would you like to do your typical engagement thing?
We are so excited for you to join us tonight. If you happen to be in person, I know it's crowded, but come down, wade through the people. You can ask your question directly. We will make space for you. If you're on Facebook, type your question in. And we do have some, our staff that can answer your question from Facebook and Zoom. If you're on Zoom, click on the hand icon to ask your question in person, or well, if you're in person, we got you. But I think it's just Facebook and Zoom. We are ready for your questions.
Thank you. Next slide. So we're kicking off with the treasurer's, what we speak in acronyms around here. KPI means key performance indicator, and that's how we measure our productivity. And so there's a general thought that what gets measured gets done or gets improved. And so we picked out every team that's in the treasurer's office has a set of data that measures their performance, error rates or successes, and we review those on a monthly basis. So I won't read them all to you, but we have two monthly reviews. One is all the team's departmental measures. For example, our payables department. So when I first took over as a treasurer's office, I used to get a lot of complaints about how long it took us to pay our vendors. And so we started a team to say, okay, why? And so we looked at low-hanging fruit, anything that was over 90 days old, and then we just kept improving. And so we'll show you some charts here in a little bit. But that's an example of one of the teams. And then the second review in the month is we have 9 quality improvement teams in addition to those daily operation groups that are focused on process improvement of something. And I have those lists down on another slide, but there's 9 of them. And then on a biweekly basis, Mike, our assistant treasurer, and Kevin Ashley, our director of financial transparency and reporting, meet to look at bank balance accounts and what our future cash projections are. And then we make decisions about how much money to invest, how much money to keep in our operations. We need to make sure we want to maximize our investment income, but don't make sure we have enough cash for cash flow purposes. So we do that on a biweekly basis. And then on a weekly review, we send out and celebrate a lot of activity, including 6,220 paychecks that we issued last Friday. And then we're also looking at how are we in compliance with our fraud training new rule. Every government employee or board member, elected official has to go through fraud training from the state of Ohio. And we are at 93%, I believe. So we're getting there. The deadline was November 1st. So we're a little bit behind, but we're a big district, have a lot of people to chase down. So, okay, so next slide. So this is a picture of some measures that we have on a dashboard. And so you can see examples of the kind of things that we track. So the box that's on the top left is for payroll. And what they're tracking is all the different web corrections. So after time cards are submitted, people will say, oh, you didn't pay me for the right number of hours, or you didn't charge me for sick leave. I forgot to report my sick leave. And so they fill out a little correction form. And so right now we're sitting at about a 96% accuracy on a paycheck. This is really important because when somebody's paycheck is wrong, they get mad at the payroll department. but 96% of the errors on a paycheck actually occur outside the treasurer's office. It starts either at the school or the department level, or it could be a mistake in the HR system or something, or a delay in processing information. And so we're really tracking that data so that we can help improve the process that crosses a bunch of departments. The box on the left is our accounts payable team. As you can see, what that's measuring is any invoice that we have on site that's over 31 days old. And so you can see the incredible improvement. Now the blips there are, the big blip at the beginning is our transition from year-end close, because we have like 2 weeks where we don't issue any checks. And then school office is closed and we don't get invoices in. The blip in the next little blip is the period in September where school starts. And so that's a lot of chaos out in the schools and everybody's trying to get ready and not focusing on paying bills. And then you see a little blips over each holiday. The last little blip was spring break. So that's, it's just information, it's help us to help, take steps to be proactive and remind people to do that before you go out on break. So the box on the upper right-hand side is our bank reconciliation data. When I took over 10 years ago, we had a very large bank variance. And we've got, now we look at it every month. We walk through the whole reconciliation, make sure it's being done accurately. And as you can see, it's usually around $250 from one month to the next. And it's usually because something happened at the last day of the month and it didn't hit the bank, right? And so it's gotten down, the lowest we've had was $53 and we had a party. So David Manya and our team is awesome and he does a really wonderful job at this. So that's how we monitor that. And then the box at the bottom on the right-hand side is our accounts receivable aging. So you might ask, what would a district bill for? And it's most of our Community Reinvestment Act pilot payments. And so those were getting a little delayed. And so we started focusing on anything that was over 60 days. And so what Ben has done, our accounts receivable supervisor, is the bottom line is the data that's 61 days to 90, and the top line is the ones that are at above 91. And so you can see that there's a trend going downward. And so we're improving that. Having the finance committee approve allowing us to charge late fees helped that a lot to get people to pay a little bit faster. So those are just some of the examples. We have like 39 different measures that we look at on a fairly regular basis. It's a lot, but we do a lot of work. So next slide. So this is a list of the quality improvement projects. It's really the science of improving processes. And we partner with Children's Hospital. We're very grateful for their investment in our district. They allow a lot of CPS employees to take their class. In fact, we have 2 people taking it this year and they're graduating tomorrow. Oh, wow. So yeah, so we actually have 9 active teams and I won't go through and read them all to you, but you can read them at your leisure. One of those that I was looking at today, which was the reimbursement of the employees, that was actually a result of an audit, internal audit, and so there's a recommendation to go and fix that process because they had found in their audit where people had been reimbursed for mileage like twice. And they do it and they forget that they got paid for it and they do it again. And it's a manual process. It's a piece of paper, well now it's a web form, but we don't have the same kinds of controls on that as we do on vendor payments. And so we're working, Mike's leading up that team. Actually, he's going to transition to somebody else because he's starting to pick up my duties. But anyway, so that's how internal audit and the financial department work together. That was my last slide. I wanted to give Lauren a lot of time, but I'll just pause there and see if there's any questions.
I want to say something too. And part of people always ask like, well, why do you guys talk about money so much? And I would like for people to realize, and our budget committee members to share as well, that's part of the responsibility of a board member is to maintain the fiscal responsibility or integrity of the district. And you and your team do a really great job about explaining it. I don't think that school funding and finance is sexy. It's not really the most attractive thing. And I think people have a difficult time the more zeros and commas we have. But we really do have a lot of things in place that allot for being fiscally responsible and accountable and transparent. So I kind of really would also like to invite the board members to share a little bit about what you all do in committee to help maintain some of we see the end result.
Right.
But a lot of work goes on in committee, and it would be really nice to kind of get a small little peek behind the veil from the committee members about what you all do in budget to get us to this point. And I'm going to invite Board Member Craig and then Board Member Crossett.
Well, I think, there's kind of twofold to, it was a journey last year to get us talking about KPI more and talking about quality improvement more. I think part of the reason that this is important also is because our budget doesn't seem to be growing anytime soon. But we still have a lot of work that we have to do, and we have to find ways to do it well. And I give a lot of credit to Jen and her team, specifically to Mike and to Cody and to Kevin and to the others who have come in and constantly are able to explain and bring in the other parts of our buildings to really walk through how we're looking at efficiency on things, everything from the equipment we buy to do maintenance and facility work, all the way to how we look at systems and think about how we do accounts payable, or think about how we do paychecks, or think about what's the benefit and the additional value of adding a social worker to a school, or adding a additional assistant principal, or these types of things are all parts of the stuff that we've looked at, really to be the best fiscal stewards of that dollar, right? So because one of the struggles I do think, and to kind of the point there, it is really, really, really hard to take a machine like a school district and really turn it without thinking about how things are done and without thinking about how things will continue to get done. Because otherwise, you're just going to cut stuff, and then you start cutting stuff, and then it's not necessarily the best thing to work with everything else. The second thought, though, and this is where I think, as we think about this going forward, and this is where I want to give the Treasurer Wagner a lot of credit as well, we have this conversation a lot of times over and over again, and it feels like it's very repetitive, but for anyone who's ever taught, you learn the best way you learn things is to do it over and over again, and to hear it over and over again, and eventually it starts sticking in people's brain. And so the real mark of the growth of that is when we come to board meetings with the full board and folks who are not on finance, who are talking about what are our performance indicators, what are our measurables, what are our return on investment. And that language was not something that was necessarily at every board meeting when I joined. We were still trying to figure out what did it cost. Right. And now we're looking at, okay, well, we know a little bit better about what it costs, but what is the benefit of it? And so I think that is part of the reason that the last year or two has really been a great opportunity for us to do more of those conversations.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Board Member Craig has said. We are very fortunate to have a really good finance team at Cincinnati Public Schools. And the improvements that you put in and the quality of the work is very good. It kind of leads into internal audit or to the audit. We've had clean audit opinions for 2 decades at least. So thank you very much for all the accuracy in the work that you do. Also, I think that what's really cool about the KPIs is that you're willing to take a look at yourself. It takes a little bit of courage to do that, to say, here's where we might be making mistakes, and put it out there for the public to see, rather than, trying to hide it from the public. So that's a really important thing for everybody to recognize. So, yeah.
We call that showering in public. You got to bring it into the light in order for people to buy into the fix. So
I did have a question. Of the quality improvement projects, do you have a favorite?
I'd have to say that first one.
Yeah.
Because it's, the first one is reducing negative vacancies, and what that means is overfilled positions. And so our software system allows, it says we need 100 kindergarten teachers. And it'll tell them there's a warning that if they try to add the next one, that there's a warning that there isn't funding there for them. But it wouldn't stop them from hiring. And then so we also discovered that as we're going through, rolling over to a new year, people are shifting all over the place from one building to the next. And it was hard for the HR department to do that rollover, keep up with all the new hires, switch everybody around and keep all the data updated. And so sometimes we find ourselves in a place where we had, 5 more reading specialists than we needed. And so when we started this project, it started in a year where there was a lot of turnover in HR. And we had over 220 overfilled positions. And you can't manage, so we're our department, our funding, we are a human capital enterprise. And so if you can't manage the human capital, then you can't manage your budget. And so what we discovered is the process crossed over a bunch of different departments, and not one person in that group understood the process from beginning to end. And so we spent a lot of time trying to document what is the process, just walk a piece of paper through. And after that, it took us 2 years to get it down on a regular but consistency down, and it saved about $14 million worth of would have been an overspend. In fact, children's hospitals use that as one of their examples of why they want Children's Hospital to continue funding this effort, because it's having a huge impact on our district, on just our floor. And once a year, all of our teams present to Dr. Rob Kahn and his team, and so they can actually see the fruits of their labor.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great news.
So do we have any questions from the public related to this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. First, we'd like to remind everyone how to participate. So while you're watching online, if you click on the Facebook and you put your question in the comments, we will go ahead and share your question with the panel. And if you're on Zoom, you can also either raise your hand to be invited in and/or ask questions in the question section. So we'd love to continue to take your questions as more people pop on here on Facebook. So secondly, what's the difference between a KPI and a goal?
Oh, great question. So a KPI is a key performance indicator, and it's a measure of success. So how are you going to know, or improvement? So how are you going to know, we used to get complaints from the schools all the time to say, it takes too long for us to buy stuff. You guys are taking forever. And it was, at the time we started, I think it was about 15 days from the date of entry of the requisition till we got to a PO. And that's if it didn't need board approval. If it needed board approval, it was much longer. But now we're under 5 days. So we're pretty, we would compete with any corporate office at this point. But so that's like a measure of a process. A key performance indicator is like, if you think about your car dashboard, you have a gas indicator, you have a miles per, your speedometer, you have your oil indicator. So it's measuring how you're performing as you go. A goal is the end result of something that you want to achieve. So I might say a goal is I want to increase my employee attendance from, I don't know, I'm just making numbers up, 85% to 95%. That's a goal. The indicator is the absenteeism rate.
I think what maybe want to add on to that too is that a goal, oftentimes a goal is more amorphous to larger than the process. And the key performance indicators are really specific to the process.
Yeah.
So to what Treasurer Wagner was describing there, if you have something where it is really, if the process worked, this is how it should look. It's more what we would look at the key performance indicators. This is the benefit the process worked as it's supposed to. We'll see. The goal may be to save money or to be more efficient in how we do X, Y, and Z. That doesn't always track to how the key performance indicators individually work. So sometimes it'll be a little bit bigger than just one individual process.
And a follow-up to that, Jen, you had some on one of the slides, you had all of these different diagrams and settings, and you mentioned like car lights. When you're measuring the key performance indicators, do you have indicators like, oh, hey, red light, like the engine's about to break down, the oil's about to fall out, things like that? Is that part of the process a little bit?
So I have access to this data and I look at what I wanted was that, like get an alert that, my cash balance is going down, I need to do something. But our technology is not quite there yet, but so I have to intentionally go and look for the data. And some of it is collected manually and then have to be reported to put into a chart in the dashboard. But we are making improvements. We have an incredible financial technology team that is doing wonderful things for us. Every time I get an idea, I give them work.
And how do KPIs relate to return on investment?
It's a good question, too. So a return on investment is a measure of success. And so you want to spend money on something to achieve something. We want to increase third grade reading scores, so we're going to invest in reading specialists. So then you go and determine whether I don't know how many we have right now, 40 reading specialists, did the third grade scores go up? And so that would be an educational return on investment conversation. The key performance indicator would be on third grade reading, like what are all the things that lead up to the score? And so you can see benchmarks of, are the third graders attending school? Or is there, what's their absenteeism rate? How did they do on their weekly homework assignments? Are they missing certain things? Those would be key performance indicators or benchmarks to get to that end return on investment calculation.
We've talked it sometimes in committee as well with regards to return on investment, that sometimes what you're looking at is not just that did you get your goal, but is this the best way to have gotten to your goal?
Right.
Like, is this the best use of funds? Is this the best set of resources that we can do? Or are there places where you're both reaching the same goal, one reaches it $25 cheaper than the other process. So you're like, okay, well, maybe this works here a little bit better, that type of deal. And that's been a part of, I know when Dr. Moffitt was on the committee, we were looking at things like what are your cost per student or cost per, for some of these different programs and procedures and processes. In large part because we recognize some things we would have to figure out how to do it more efficiently and effectively, even though all of them may be very successful.
So several years when the student wellness grant came out from Governor DeWine, we started getting a host of vendors that would contact us and say, hey, we could do all this social emotional stuff. And so the school started hiring some of these consultants, and it was I always saw, well, they're going to increase attendance, decrease discipline, and increase test scores. And I always went back to them and said, well, did the attendance go up? Did the discipline go down? Was that money effective in achieving that goal? And so school districts are just kind of learning to look at things that way, because you want to keep reinvesting in the same thing if it's not working for you, especially when we have shrinking financial resources.
Our last question on this topic, how do the treasurer's KPIs, goals, evaluation, how do they all wrap up, work together? Who chooses the KPIs, the goals? How does the board work into that process? Kind of put a bow on it.
So choosing the KPIs was kind of a joint effort. I came up with most of them just because I've had, a 40-year career in accounting. But they're jointly done with the teams. And so, because I don't want to just dictate to them, I want them to learn how to develop this stuff themselves. So I would ask them, how do you measure your results? What would you feel good about? The goals are done, my personal goals are done in conjunction with Finance Committee and then adopted by the board, and they're done annually, and I get evaluated annually. And then my goals get cascaded down through our team, through my direct reports and then their direct reports. And I will tell you that I required every one of my administrators to have a goal on a quality improvement effort. One of their goals, out of the 3 goals, had to be on one of those efforts. So, and we also made them do the internal audit recommendations because it's so easy to say, oh, thanks, Lauren, you told us these great recommendations, and then your day-to-day life takes over and you forget. It's not purposeful, but now we require it. And then we also, that's another thing we do monthly, is we look at all the recommendations and where do we stand against them, so she doesn't report that we're late.
I think it's really super important to also give kudos to the entire board, because my colleagues and I, we're speaking the same language. We're speaking KPIs, we're speaking ROI, and although they are acronyms to the public, we all understand what that means. Yeah. And so we're very, very conscious, from the board to the superintendent to the treasurer to the auditor, probably to the general counsel as well, that we are talking about return on investment. How does this impact students? Mm-hmm. And if we make one little tweak, even though it may not have hit the goal, is it trending that way? We're having different conversations, in part because we have to, but because there has been that push from your department as well.
I mainly just wanted the board and the public to understand how hard we work to be as efficient as we can, because every dollar that we save in efficiencies goes back into the classroom. Yeah. And so I take this very seriously, and that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about it tonight.
Let's keep going. Like,
Yes.
we've got some more great juicy stuff for
So,
you.
Lauren, you got the con.
Oh, wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone. I am thrilled to be here, and I think these two topics just go hand in hand so well. One of my further points I'm about to mention on my slides is every dollar we save goes back to the classroom, and I think that's just such a guiding light and the real reason we all do this work. So let's hop on in. So the first slide, this might be the question you're wondering when you saw tonight's presentation advertised. What is internal audit? So internal audit is an independent and objective, those are bolded, we'll come back to that, activity that helps us add value and improve an organization's operations. We assist the board and administration in fulfilling their responsibilities by providing recommendations to strengthen processes and internal controls. So that's some jargon for you. We're going to break it down, but you will see quoted on this slide our Institute of Internal Auditors. That's the governing body for best practices of audit. And then it's further strengthened by our internal audit charter, which is a board policy. So you can see the coherence between our board policies and best practices throughout the industry. So moving on to our next slide. How does internal audit support CPS? So you can see there is a summary on the slide of the key points and key takeaways of the ways internal audit supports CPS. We enhance the district's ability to achieve its objectives by improving governance, risk management, and control processes. We also play a crucial role in promoting transparency, accountability, and decision-making across the district. So this next slide takes it just one step further. So what's the impact? You can see a lot of our conversation today is impact, ROI, KPI. What's the purpose, what's the point, and why are we doing these things? So you can see we have a measurable impact on the district by increasing operational efficiency, improving compliance, and promoting stakeholder confidence. Every dollar saved, I told you I was going to say it, every dollar saved or process improved goes back into the classroom. That's our why, and that's why the impact, those dollars really, really matter. So this is where we start to bring our conversations together. Treasurer Wagner mentioned those recommendations that we issue and that they track and they watch and they report back to us how they're going. So taking a step back a little further, at the conclusion of every audit, we issue this beautiful report that everyone rushes to us and grabs these 20-page documents to read over the evening. And then they take these recommendations and, like Jen said, they get to work. They embed them into their daily processes and integrate it, especially through the KPI and QI work that they do. So this pie chart shows us, since I joined the district back in 2016, it's been a little now, we've issued 186 recommendations, my team and I. Of those recommendations, the slide shows you there, they, meaning the administration, the district, has implemented and addressed nearly 77% of those recommendations. So truly, that's a testament to the dedication of the district to not only, dare I say, we're not going through the motions of an audit, we're taking them seriously and we're seeing them through to the end. So this slide just gives the public a little insight into the types of things we look at. So you'll see a wide variety of processes that are covered there. I have an accounting background, so starting with the district, we were very, very, very involved in all of the treasurer's office processes. Now, I don't think there's one we haven't touched. So we've broadened our scope, we've stepped into different areas, and we've gotten into some less financial areas like you'll see with our security badge access, for example. One thing I think is very important to note, though, is just because we're auditing an area doesn't mean there's a problem. In fact, it could be an opportunity, like what we've been discussing, opportunity for efficiency, opportunity to minimize risk through adding controls. So just because we select something for an audit, it's actually can be a very positive thing too. So I think through our time working together, we've hopefully started to adapt the perception of audit. I think when I first started, the natural response from someone when they think they're being audited is not necessarily the most positive. Audit doesn't have that necessarily the best connotation, but that's the benefit of internal audit, is that we are choosing as an organization, as a collective team, to take the opportunity. I think you might have said shower in public. We're just going to take it on and we're going to deal with the facts and we're going to make things better. So this is just a glance into some of that work.
And can I just add
Yeah,
something? So one
please,
of her
please.
audits, they were doing payroll, and they actually validated that our process was really good and it was accurate. And so I wanted to like tape that to my door.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's also, and many of the audits that she's done, it's at my request.
Yes.
Because, you know, they have expertise and time to do that work that we don't necessarily have. Plus, she's objective. I don't have any control, responsibility, authority over Lauren. And so what the reports that she's doing for all of us add a lot of value and what's the word I'm looking for? Strength to the data.
Oh, I appreciate that. And that's really our goal as we sit with our superintendent and our treasurer, is to say what information, what feedback, where are potential pain points or things you wish you knew more about, so we can be proactive and we can get that information, get some recommendations, and throw them right into your process and get them addressed. So that's a great point there.
We've also used Lauren's team to help as we're building out something new, to look at it for internal control its weaknesses and
Yes.
before we actually implement. So we use her a lot.
Yeah, so I guess that's one thing I could touch on briefly, is the types of projects that we do. So you can see just in this summary, there's a wide variety of content or areas, but we also have different services. So what Jen was just talking about was more of our advisory work. So we can come in as independent and objective. I mentioned bolded, that's the important part. We can come in as outsiders to an area and say, how are things working? How are they functioning? And are there areas as an outsider that we might suggest for recommended improvement? The key of it all, though, and the tricky part sometimes, because we get so invested in the outcomes, is we have to then step away and allow management to do the work. Because we could certainly never audit something that we put in place, because gosh, we're going to think it's great. So that's good. Thank you so much for that point. All right, well, moving on to the next slide, I just have one more thing to share with you all. Let's look at our time. So we could hop into the dashboard and just take a quick glance through. So I do invite the public to utilize the link shown there to hop in and take a look at our audit committee dashboard. So one thing I didn't mention or introduce was our audit committee, and I look to Mr. Crossett as a long-term member of our committee, so I'm sure he'll have more to add. But we report to, and my position specifically is a direct report of the board via our audit committee. Our audit committee is a 10-member committee composed of community members who volunteer their time and expertise to advise the district. So we are incredibly fortunate. We are one of very few in the state and the elite group, I would say, in the country to have a committee that gives us that level of oversight and support. So we meet with them on a bi-monthly basis, and from an internal audit standpoint, we wanted a way to communicate with the audit committee as well as the board members. Where do we stand with all of our internal audits, our external audits, and all of those 186 recommendations? It's a lot to keep track of. So you'll see on this dashboard, it's a quick glimpse into the external audits. If you scroll down just a tad there, we tried our best to track all external audits taking place throughout the district. So for those who are not familiar, external audits are audits performed by entities, you're going to guess it, external, outside, not CPS, that come in and provide third-party oversight. So examples might be Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, Ohio Auditor of State. I think we could go on the rest of the night with the number of
We usually
external
have, what,
audits.
13, 14 audits a year. It's
a
lot
lot.
of work.
Yes, but those are those checks that keep us informed of where we are and that we are in fact being compliant and good stewards of taxpayer dollars. So moving on, just briefly touching on this internal audit summary. Essentially, every year we put together an audit plan that has all of our projects. So this dashboard gives everyone an insight and a glimpse into where we stand with those projects. So finally, at the very bottom, you'll see a table that summarizes past recommendations And this is a little out of date. Our next update is coming here in the next week or so. But this will show, again, those progress towards implementation. And again, it's a great accountability tool, but more than anything, it keeps all these concepts, these recommendations on the forefront of all of our minds. So I know that was a lot to share. I'm happy to take a breath, take a pause, and get some feedback and questions.
I just want to lift up some things that you shared, Lauren. You have, since you started in 2016, I know you were probably 10 at the time, you have completed 187 recommendations. That's a very good word. And that's a lot. I just want to make sure that we reiterate that that is a lot. And you shared 77% of them have been completed, which is a significant number. Can you talk about a little bit about maybe why they have not been, or what are some of the barriers that your department faces? I also want to lift up too that you shared that's a public dashboard. So the public can get on and peruse our site, but they can find this dashboard and engage with it and see all of the historical data, because your team, your small team of people, of staff, have done a great job at putting that in there. But can you talk about some of the barriers that you might be?
I might be able to answer that question a little bit.
Okay.
I served on the audit committee for 20 years before joining the school board. And one of the things that's interesting about the recommendations that have not been completed is that there's a dynamic component there. In other words, if the recommendation is outdated or it needs to be adjusted because of new information, that's part of that process. It's not just, you know, it's a collaboration between the administration and the audit recommendation.
Yes, absolutely. And take that further, essentially, we are not looking that management takes our exact recommendation and does what we say, because they're the owner of the process. What we're looking for is that underlying risk, that underlying gap or underlying opportunity. Is that really addressed? Maybe it's outdated. Maybe we no longer do that. Not really relevant. Let's kind of move on from that. Or the risk that we saw 5 years ago isn't the risk that we see today. So now how do we stay on top of that as well? And so I'll speak just from the audit perspective. The fact that we have outstanding recommendations to me is not highly concerning. It says that we are continuing to invest and to see those through with high quality work. We never want people to mark them complete to move our dashboard ahead. We want to see it through. And some of the challenges are that reality of resources and things like that really can be difficult for what are very lean and mean teams throughout the district to find the time to elevate the work. So I think there are very complex reasons for each individual area, but I think maybe you can lead more into that.
Yeah, so I can give you an example. One of the recommendations was relying on a board policy change. And so we're working through finance committee to get that done. And we may have been a little bit, a lot of times when those recommendations come out, we're like, yeah, we can get them done in 2 weeks, and then somebody has the flu and you miss your target. So we're always excited about implementing things, but maybe not realistic on when we can get them accomplished. Sure. So some of this, it's a little bit of everything in terms of barriers, but certainly with our current administration, and our superintendent is in the room hiding.
Amongst all the great people that are here too.
And the fact that Lauren has now joined the leadership team and comes on a regular basis is kind of just elevating her purpose in the district. And so people are learning more about, it's not about gotcha, right? It's not like the state auditor's coming in to find somebody who did something wrong. She's here to help us get better. And I keep jerking my cord. And so it's taken, just like it took us a while to teach people what return on investment meant, it's taken people a while to kind of just trust that the internal audit function is there to help and not hurt.
And I think it's also important to reiterate, because you said you report to the board by way of the audit committee, which is comprised of community members that are parents, that are business professionals. Some of these people know.
They're our taxpayers.
They are our taxpayers, and they are very involved with the intricacies that are going on with us financially to help us maintain that level of transparency and accountability. But then also the board members on the budget sit on the audit committee as well. So I really want to make sure that people understand everything works together. We're talking the same language. We're speaking ROI, KPI, and all of those goals amongst board members, amongst budget and finance, amongst the audit committee, amongst the internal auditor, the superintendent. We're all speaking the same language with the goal of, and I wrote this down, every dollar we save goes back into the classroom. And that's really the intention of all of this, to be transparent, fiscally responsible, and then save money and be efficient so that we can educate our students. We've got lots of Just Ask Jens about where the dollars go and how we don't have enough. But now with what we do have, we're trying to be responsible. So, yeah.
One point I wanted to make that I think that is important that you do in internal audit is when you put together your annual plan, you have a process that you go through that assess risk.
Yes.
And that prioritizes where you want to spend your time. And so that's a very effective tool that you didn't highlight that when you were talking, but I think it's important for the public to know that it's just not a random plan. It's an intentional, purposeful plan.
Absolutely.
And I did also want to talk about the audit committee itself. We have a really robust, active audit committee. We have more people in the public that want to volunteer for it than we have spaces, which is great. And I think it was maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, we had a consultant help us with, I think with planning, audit planning. And this person has had a perspective of the whole state of Ohio and indicated that we had the most robust audit committee and audit team in the state of Ohio. And, you know, the benefit to the district has been amazing. So just for what it's worth, the public could
There are
know
also a
that.
group of people that I've reached out to before, you know, as a different perspective in corporate America. And new innovations, they've actually brought us new innovations, the guy from Ernst & Young, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, what was his name? Derek?
Jeff Warshall.
Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Shout out to Jeff. I
Yes.
think I said him out
Sorry,
there.
Jeff. Derek, that's your nickname. So, yeah, so they bring us ideas and they're obviously very emotionally supportive of us,
Yes,
right? And so
yes.
sometimes it's hard to be out on that financial limb or that, you know, Dollar Tree. And so it's helpful to have a group of people there that can lift you up.
It's all about commiseration.
Well, and I think one of the things also, and this is the beauty of what Lauren has been able to do with the audit team, is that it's been an evolution of how we did that work as well and what that work meant. You know, we spent a lot of time and effort trying to audit things that we, you know, at one point last year kind of started to adopt the language of not being, is something auditable. Because we were looking at processes, and maybe to your question earlier, there are things that we looked at, procedures and processes where they were not yet ready to implement the recommendations as well. And so like we have to get them there. And I think that's been one of the beautiful things that we've been able to do over the last couple of years with adjusting the concept of how you walk into a room. You're not walking in now and saying, tell me what you're doing so I can tell you why you're doing it wrong. We are walking in and looking at it from a couple different perspectives, whether it's where can we potentially see efforts to build systems so that then we can come back and look at those systems and see how they work. Where do you have systems in place so we can evaluate those systems? And where have we already looked at systems to see where you are now at in your process? And I think that is one of the beautiful things also, to give a shout out to your team, that the dashboard has really been able to allow us to do an audit committee, because it used to be you would sit there with a large sheet of paper, you know, with 40 pages or so, trying to figure out where we were doing and the status of things. And now we're able to kind of look at it in a chart and a bar graph to be able to see things in a more concise way. And I would love for us as a district, as we think about this same thing, and again, the treasurer's office is working also with a dashboard, that we can get to those things where people can just kind of see it in a more concise and digestible way. Then folks out there will understand better why some of these things matter. Why the fact you've told me this now for the third time, you know, in 6 months, I should probably get on this task, right? I'm the only one who hasn't done my task. Well, okay, so maybe that was me. That ain't just everybody. But you can do it in a way that doesn't look like I'm coming to attack you. And I think so often we hear the word audit, that is what a lot of people think about. They look at IRS audit, they look at these other places where you would hear about an audit, and they're thinking, oh my God, they're coming to get me. You all have done a great job of transitioning that culture to say, we're trying to help.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think to kind of pull those 2 points of conversation together too, from a risk management standpoint, that's, I think, another role that we kind of help bridge with our management team, our board. Essentially, we look at our organizational strategy and say, what are the ultimate goals? And what are the things, the risks perhaps, that could get in our way or could possibly prevent those goals from being achieved? And so through that annual risk assessment process, it's very methodical, it's very calculated, and it also incorporates the human aspect. We survey, we meet with, we collaborate. So you take these quantifiable items, you take these more qualitative items, and then you kind of use this science and maybe a bit of art to bridge it all together to come up with a plan that says, we must focus our efforts either via an audit because it's well suited, or maybe if it's not so auditable or if it's not the right time, or management can already see, oh, you know what, we don't need the audit, we know what we need to do to bring this risk down to a more controlled level. So from the public standpoint, if you're looking at a matrix, you might think of seeing all these grids of all these possible areas, and we want to keep everything in the green, all these little blocks that are green, we're all controlled. Something may arise in a process due to a new compliance requirement or a reduction in funding. Now that risk has moved into a red. So we're kind of picturing this like this dashboard, if you will, of, oh, that needs some attention. Do we need to hop on it? Do you need to hop on it? Does the board need to adjust strategy? So that way we're staying with the evolution of our landscape, which these days is changing very rapidly. So I think that's why audit and the risk management thought process, the KPI, all of our acronyms, they all serve a different point in ensuring we can meet those ultimate goals.
One of my favorite examples of the world changing in the midst of you all doing an audit, we had a lovely audit that told us cash in schools, not the best way to do things. And then the state came and said, guess what you need to do?
Yeah.
You need to have cash in schools.
And we were doing our best. We were actually, one of our measures in the key performance indicators of the Treasurer's Office is how many cash transactions we have versus non-cash. And we were flipping it. Thank you, state.
And the public doesn't realize, they're just thinking that we're being insensitive, but they don't realize sometimes a lot of things are driven to us by legislation, by the state, things that we have to do, whether that be a process or that be a mandate on some things that we have to pay for. But when you talk about cash, that's very simple.
Yes.
We don't want there to be a opportunity for cash to disappear. We are really trying hard to make sure that every dollar raised for our students gets spent on our students. And cash has cash can sometimes grow legs.
Harder to track.
Yes, but then the state comes back and says, oh, no, you're gonna do that. So while we're trying to be efficient, while we're trying to utilize the benefits of what the auditor has said based on best practices in our historical context, the state comes down and says, no. So people look at us and think, well, why are you guys doing that? But really, some things are done to us.
But they don't just say no. So if the state comes down and does an audit and finds that we've inappropriately paid something or lost money or something like that, they go for finding a recovery, which means I have to pay the money back to the district because I was in control of that system. And so there's a high risk to licensed treasurers, and that's why they have a hard time finding them and keeping them. And so having an internal audit team that can help me avoid that stuff is amazing. We're very fortunate and blessed to have. And Lauren she's so disarming that, and the team members that she's hired are the same way. They're just,
Joyce.
it's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I think having the 20-plus years of clean audit opinions is amazing.
Yes.
And, for the public to know that we are accurate in what we're doing is just really important for the stakeholders. So thank you very much for all
Well,
that
we need
great
to explain
service.
that, because clean audit opinions are not done by our internal auditor.
Correct.
Those are
External,
external.
Right.
correct.
External and
But
state
it's a
audit.
collaboration with internal audit and with the finance department. And
Sure.
so it's a team effort.
Well, I just want them to know that we're being looked at on the inside and the out.
Sure.
And so we are getting an external clean audit opinion.
Right.
That says we're doing things right. We're trying to improve processes on the inside too.
And if I might, Rob, do you mind putting slide 20 up on the screen for us? I just think this will show our public how we are, oh, thanks.
Thank you.
Show our public how we are audited every which way, if you will. So this just explains the differences, and I certainly won't read, but while we're talking, the community can glance through the difference between our external audits and our internal audits. And it really, we are being proactive from every angle and getting feedback from every angle.
It makes a difference.
Yes.
Rob, we got some questions that we didn't ask?
Yeah, and our first question was, what's the difference between an internal and external audit, and why do we need an internal auditor?
Absolutely. So I think the sentiment I hope that we've conveyed through our conversations today is internal audit. I am an employee, our team are employed by this organization, and we share the same goals. We want to see the success for our district and remove those barriers that could potentially get in our way. So internal audit has that focus, whereas external audit, let's use the example of the Ohio Auditor of State, they are much further separated, perhaps a layer or two, and they're representing our taxpayers. So by having internal audit, hopefully we've done all the checks, we have our management team, our administration who own those controls and processes, all working together to be ready and to put our best foot forward so we can have clean external audits. So it's much more of a proactive, situation, and maybe you have things to add there as well.
And mostly the state auditor, what they're doing is they're offering an opinion on the fairness and accuracy of our financial reporting, because they can't check everything. We have thousands of transactions a year, but they did random sampling. Well, Lauren mostly helps with processes to make sure they don't break down to cause a problem. The external auditors test for problems.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this is not a new position. You've been here since 2016, so this is a position that has been created a very, very long time ago.
Right. And Lauren's our third internal auditor, so.
Yeah, and when I started, I was a team of one, and now we have 2 full-time and an intern with us, and it just shows the level of work that we can achieve when we have the teams to really focus on it.
And I also want to, you had an opportunity to go and speak to some students to get them engaged on being an
Yes,
auditor. Again,
yes.
this is not the sexiest topic. People
Oh,
are nervous
no,
about it.
it was great. We had students saying, wait, this is not just accounting. I could go be an auditor for forensic accounting, or I could be an auditor for a sports team. There's auditors everywhere, and they, maybe don't look like what you think or do the work that you may think. So personally, I'm biased, but it's a great role.
And accounting work crosses many, many industries.
Yes.
So I've worked in 3 different industries in my lifetime, so
And
how
these
about some
are-
more questions?
These are 2 women, and we need women in this field.
Yeah.
Great, we've talked a little bit about risk. Can you talk a little bit about some of the risks that the district faces both internally and externally?
So I think as I analyze risk for our district, a consistent risk year over year is that we are a large organization. So as a company, if we were to look at us like a company, we have the central office, and then we have locations, which of course are our schools. So it is the job of the central office to ensure that there are processes that are transferable and appropriate and adhered to at each of those levels. And so that's a lot of complexity, and we give our schools a lot of credit for all the effort that they put forth in adhering to those processes. And I know sometimes we get the questions, why do we have to do all of these things? And they might be internal controls. They also may be things that we don't have a choice over. The state requires us to do X. So I think that's a risk, if you will, that we require people in so many different locations with so many different other things perhaps competing for their time and resources to adhere to all of these areas. So that's just one from a process standpoint, but I think from a broader standpoint, we could talk about our funding. I think there's just Ask Jens about all of these things. We could go all night, but I think that's from a very simplistic standpoint, a lot of times how we look at things.
Right, and just to piggyback on that, we're a district where a lot of the work is decentralized. In other districts, everything is centralized, financial transactions. And so when you have 10 people, it's easier to stay accurate and make sure that you have the proper internal controls in place. When you have 65 people handling cash, it's a little bit different, so it's a little bit riskier. You have to have stronger controls and audits.
I'll add one other little part to that is that we are also a district that has grown in a non-consistent way. And so that's meant some buildings have different needs, they have different wants. Some parts of our district have different needs and different wants. And it makes it very hard to get consistent results and be able to understand and digest the risk of one action, because it may be different risk at different buildings and different risk in different offices and
And
different
different
risk.
funding sources,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's very uniquely in that way.
Yeah, and thank you. And that's definitely different from a private company who doesn't have to answer for all the taxpayer money, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then our next
I'm
question.
sorry, but private companies get audited because they have loans with the banks, and the bank they want to make sure that their loans are properly accounted for. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead with your question.
No, that was perfect. So we also talked about risk, and we've talked about fraud training, the state requirement for fraud training. First question is, have we had any princes offer us a few $1 million? And with, as a joke, but
I was like, did we
Fools.
really?
Jen looked at me for a moment like, no one has offered us a couple $1 million.
Didn't hear about this one.
But more importantly, we have a lot of external risk and external fraud and people trying to, get money and earn money. Can you talk a little bit about that and how the audit team and the treasurer's team work together to prevent those things?
Yeah, I might even toss in the ITM team with all of our phishing emails these days too.
Yes,
So I'll let
yes.
you take it from there, but.
So one of the things that we do is when we do a lot of outsourcing of work. And so for every vendor contract, ahead of time, we try to get whoever that person is that's hiring to figure out what the performance indicator would be, so that we're not paying somebody to sit at home and do nothing, because they're not in our offices or whatever. So that's a risk avoidance, is that we can measure their performance and they're providing the services that we're paying for them to do. So I lost my train of thought. What were we-
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we are concerned about, our organization and every other organization, individuals, are the bad actors, the people with malintent that look for an easy target, and we're not going to be that. I think we have ITM folks who have been teaching our employees to spot phishing emails. So you said the prince wherever asking for the money. I kid you not, I've gotten emails that say, Lauren, this is superintendent. I need you to go buy $500 of Amazon gift cards and send them to me right away because I have this lunch I have to get to. And they create this sense of urgency. And so people act sometimes without taking the time to think. And so we're training our employees to pause, to make that phone call, to validate externally. And I think there's risks too of that people, try to change banking information. And we have really robust controls that prevent someone from picking up the phone and saying, hi, I'm first student, not to pick on anyone, I'm whoever, and I'm a vendor. We pay, I know that CPS pays a lot of money to them. I'm them, and I'm going to defraud the district. And we have such robust controls in place that doesn't fly around here. So I think you might have some other examples.
I think one thing that also comes about the work that they've been doing, and it's about process, is that the faster and the better we are at using those processes for contracts, the better we are at paying our employees for different things that are being done, and then it leaves less room for things like someone reaching out. So when someone does reach out by email and says, I need to change all this information, that's not the process. And because it's not the process, it flags more
Yes.
because we have a process. And I think that's one of the things that internal audit is 100% here for, is to ensure that we have processes in place that prevent risk from coming in, but also minimize, when those risks do come, the likelihood of their success.
Absolutely.
And it's also notable as well that school districts, who would do this, but we become targets of hackers, we become targets of pirates that want to steal money from us. And so some of our processes have been shored up so tightly that we can tell when attempts happen, and we've had some, and we're able to stop that as well with checks and balances. And so it's really just a continued effort for us, the district, to be transparent, fiscally responsible with their money, but then also protect
Yeah.
the kids and the data.
So we have a really good team that, across the entire senior leadership team and the department, so that when there is a scare, I would call them the rapid response team, where everybody jumps in either on a Zoom meeting or they jump in a conference room and start talking about who's going to do what and just support each other through that process. So, and then we learn from it, right? In the 10 seconds I have left, okay, just 10. We have a button on the website that says, do you want to ask Jen a question, or there's a topic you want her to address? And I promise that every time I get one, I address it at the next just. So I have two recent ones. One came in on March 30th at 6:59 p.m. And the question is, what is CPS planning to mitigate potential funding cuts in the budget? Example, holds, restructuring expenses, terminations, et cetera, whether the federal or state. And I think they hit send before they finish their question. But what I would say is, we're early in the process of doing the budget, and so we're doing things a little bit differently this year. We're actually starting with state minimums and then adding, instead of everybody saying, okay, I have this budget, I'm gonna roll it over and then add for new things, which always increases the budget. We're starting off with what we're required to do by the state and nothing, or federal government or collective bargaining agreement. And then we build from there. And so we're at the very beginning stages of that. We'll be updating all our progress in the Monday night board meetings. And so if you're interested to follow along, we'll keep you updated. Then the second one that came in just a little bit late, same day, a little bit later, was ramification for related services such as OT, PT, SLP, and I'm not sure I know what TBI is.
What do those acronyms stand for?
Occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language professional services, and I don't know what the TBI was, and they might be trying to say Title VI, but I'm not sure. But so I immediately contacted our Director of Special Needs, Chrissy Reeves, and we've not actually been identified or been communicated that we're losing any federal funds yet, so don't panic. But all these services, if they're written into an IEP and an individual education plan for students with special needs, we're required to provide those services regardless of our funding goes up or down. We would just have to take it out of regular ed instruction or somewhere else, transportation to the treasurer's office or whatever, in order to pay that stuff. So I would just encourage everybody to take a deep breath. These House bill languages change throughout. We've already seen the House bill version of the governor's budget. There's some dramatic changes in it for the good, for us, for the good, I think. So hopefully we'll be able to analyze that. They just came out today. Thank you for forwarding that to us, by the way. And so we're analyzing, it's an 82-page document. I didn't have time to read everything, but there are some good changes, I think. And so just be encouraged that we're trying to be really good financial stewards, and we will do the best we can with the resources we have.
Just really quickly, I Googled it because I had some time and you were talking. So
Thank you.
TBI is the Teachers of the Visually Impaired.
Oh, okay, thank you. That was an acronym. I'm really good at acronyms because I've been here for 32 years, but that one I didn't know.
GPT this or what? But I will say really quickly to your point, that changes legislatively are happening every week. It gets impacted by you emailing, voicemailing, and calling your legislators. You wrote a letter, and that we, the superintendent and I, hand-delivered to Columbus, to both sides of the aisle, to ensure that they understood that the decisions that they are making directly impact students. It will have a direct impact on our students financially, because we can't do more with less. And so there's stuff that people can do to help us with that, with regard to federal funding and state funding as well.
Yeah, so a lot of these changes are actually decreasing our state share of funding, so it's forcing us to go back to the public more often for more money. And people are tired of paying property taxes, and we're tired of asking for them. So
Yes.
any conversation you can have with your legislators to increase state funding for schools, public schools, would be helpful.
At least ask them, don't cut us. You know, we're already doing a lot with less right now, but increase would be great, but please just leave us alone. So
So I think we're out of time, right? Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you for our
When is
special
our-
guest.
When is our next Just Ask Jen? And just so you know, our Just Ask Jens will transition in the fall to
Must ask Mike.
Money matters, money matters with Mike.
Money Matters with Mike.
In June, we're going
in
to transition,
June.
yep.
So we're gonna have a little bit of transition as we
More time with
transfer treasurers, but the topics are still gonna be relevant. The engagement and the conversations are still gonna be relevant. We're gonna still get up here and educate the public on what we do so that you all know how we do what we do with your money. When's the next one?
I don't remember the exact date, but it's, or the first week of May, I believe.
So it's coming up. So send in your questions. On the website is the link so that you can send in questions. You can always email our treasurer and email board members as well.
Yep.
Thank you all so much. Thanks to Rob and his team as well. And
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.